Hello, this is Miss Banks, and we're going to go ahead and start with comparing and ordering rational numbers today. This is video 3 for the Math 8 on Level course. You're going to start by going ahead and preparing your notes. You can find the notes in the Notes Math 8 folder inside the Edmodo Classroom. Now, the heading should be comparing and ordering rational numbers. So if you are printing this out, you'll need to fill this in like I've done here. If you're copying it down, just make sure you copy comparing and ordering rational numbers. Go ahead and put today's date, which is 9/1. You will need to come up with your own question for your Cornell notes, as well as your summary here at the bottom. Okay, let's get started. Comparing means to determine if like things are the same, bigger, or smaller than something else. Okay, so if it's the same, the mathematical term is equal to, and the symbol we use for that is the equal symbol. If something is bigger, the mathematical language is greater than, and this is the greater than symbol. Since we read left to right going this way, we get to the bigger side of the symbol, so that would be greater than. If it's turned this way, it's greater than. An example I've put here is 7 is greater than 6. That's the way we would read that, because we read from left to right. We would never read this and say 6 is less than 7. Even though that statement is true, that's not how we read the math. Okay, smaller than. The mathematical term for this is less than, and here's the mathematical symbol. Again, reading from left to right, we would get to this little bitty point first, so that's going to be the less than symbol. If I were to give an example using 7 and 6, the same numbers, what do you think, which number do you think would be on this side? What is less than what? You probably guessed it correctly, or you knew how to do it already. 6 is less than 7. Okay, to compare numbers, they must be in the same form. You'll need to know that before you can compare or order any numbers. Okay, there are several strategies that we can use to compare and order numbers. The first strategy that we learn in school is the number line, and we continue to use this throughout math in 8th grade this year. The second way is the decimal lineup. That's where you would use the knowledge that you have about place value. So you'll need to go ahead and name the place values. I've already labeled this one, and so the next one would be the tens column, and this would be the hundreds column. This column would be tenths. It's 10 with THS on the end. The next one would be hundreds. You spell it 100 with THS on the end. And the last one is thousandths. 1,000 with THS on the end. We already know those, but I just want you to make sure that you have something in your notes actually specifying where they are in alignment with the decimal. Okay, the third strategy to compare and order numbers would be reasoning, and that's just something we can do by explaining with words from something we know in our head. The next one is finding the common denominator. Common denominator means if we have a fraction that the denominators, which is the bottom portion, or the divisor, is common with the fraction we're comparing it to. So these are common. 3 and 3 are common. Okay, the next way is to cross multiply, and we'll look at that. That's also going to be used for fractions. Now, rational numbers. Let's go ahead and define a rational number. I like this little mnemonic, and what it is fun dogs play with mud zones. People don't play with mud zones. We like to stay away from mud and stay clean. However, dogs will play in mud zones. and track it all over our houses. So, fun dogs play with mud zones. You will need to memorize that and know that it is linked to rational numbers. Now, by memorizing this mnemonic, that will help us to remember all the types of numbers that are rational numbers. The first one, fun, we're going to take that F, and that's going to help us memorize the first one, fractions. And these are in no particular order. The next one, dogs, it starts with a D, and that's going to help us to remember the rational type of number, a decimal. The next one, play, starts with P, a percent, with W for whole numbers, mud, M for mixed numbers, and finally zones, that's going to be the Z for 0. And those are all of the types of rational numbers. So this will help us to remember in an easy way what rational numbers are. Now we're going to move on to doing some examples. And we're going to start with fractions. Now I'm going to go over an example, and you're going to be expected to do 1 to 2 problems in the same way, so that we can get some practice using all of the strategies that we specified in our notes. Okay, so for fractions, I have 2 fractions here, and for the example, we're going to compare -5/6 and -3/8. Now, the way that I can compare decimals, I can either use reasoning, find a common denominator, or cross multiply. And we're going to go over all 3 of those really quickly. It's not something you haven't seen before, so please just try to keep up. If you can't keep up or it's getting a little bit confusing, please stop, rewind, and replay as much as you need to. So to find a common denominator between 6 and 8, I need to find the least common multiple. And we learned about this in the 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. So I have 6 and 8. I need to find the least common multiple. I'm going to start multiplying up. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. So forth and so on. So 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, and I think that's far enough. The next one is going to be 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24, and we keep going until we find a match. There's 48 here and 48 here. So the least common multiple of 6 and 8 is 48. So that will become our common denominator. Okay, so -5/6 and -3/8. This is going to turn into something with a denominator of 48. And we've all seen this set up before. What I need to do to this 8 to turn it into 48 is multiply by 6. What I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So 8 times 6 is 48. -3 times 6 is -18. I'll do the same thing to the top fraction. 6 times what number is 48? 8. What I do to the denominator, I must do to the numerator. -5 times 8 is -40. Now that I have common denominators, I can compare these whole numbers. So now I'm really comparing -40 to -18. And the way I'm going to compare those is by using a number line. Since both of my numbers are negative, I'm going to start my 0 on my number line over here because I need all this space for negative numbers. I'm just going to draw out a few lines, and I'm going to skip numbers really big. I don't need to go -1, -2, -3, -4 all the way till I get to 40. I can just do a few numbers to help me. I'm going to say -5, -10, -15 would be somewhere over here, but I'm going to say this is -18, -30, -40. Now I know that they're in order. Now, this is the least, and this is the greater side of the number line. So anything over here compared to anything over here is gonna be like this. Okay, that's the symbol I would use to represent a number line. Okay, all the numbers on this side are less than all the numbers on this side. So there's my 40, and I know that negative 48 would be somewhere over here, and then there's my negative 18 that I'm comparing. So that tells me that negative 48 is less than negative 18. So that negative 48 came from the fraction, I'm sorry, that was supposed to be negative 40. That's okay. Negative 40 came from the fraction negative 5/6. So I can now write my number sentence. Negative 5/6 is less than negative 3/8. And that's my answer. I'm going to show you really quickly a shortcut that we can do when we find the common denominator. Now, instead of listing out all of the multiples of 6 and all of the multiples of 8 to find the least common multiple, I can simply multiply my denominators and I would have still got 48. Sometimes there is a least common multiple that is less than what it would be if we multiplied this, but a lot of times it's going to end up being whatever we get when we multiply these together. And we know how to reduce, so we can always resolve that later if necessary. So instead of going through all of this, I could have simply said the common denominator for negative 5/6 and negative 3/8 is 48, because 6 times 8 is 48.